I want to start out by just giving you an idea of what we hope to accomplish tonight. The first thing that we want to do is to give you a clear picture of what the foreclosure crisis looks like across the country, spend just a little bit of time on that, what it looks like in Michigan, and most importantly, what it looks like here at home in Hillsdale County. After we get a good feel for what that picture looks like, we want to talk about what has been done about it, what is being done about it, what's being done about it in Washington, what's being done about it at the state level, and what are we doing here in Hillsdale County. To do that, I'm going to connect some of these dots right at the very beginning, give you some good information to create that clear picture, and then we've got a number of panelists who are going to share their perspective on the crisis, and hopefully some really good information to help you understand how this is impacting you directly as homeowners, as neighbors, as advocates, and in general, just as community members. We hope to spend half of our time tonight with questions and answers, and there's no such thing as a dumb question. And if we don't know the answer, we're not going to pretend we do. We will try to find out the answer for you. So with that, I want to get started by just talking a little bit about what this foreclosure crisis looks like across the country. A couple weeks ago, the U.S. Treasury Department came out with a prediction that in the next 3 years, we expect that 6 million more Americans are going to lose their homes to mortgage foreclosure. That's a big deal. Michigan, if you listen to the news today, we've been ranking since the beginning of this crisis in the top 10 states, not an honor, in the top 10 states in terms of our rate of foreclosure. Today, the most recent report is that we rank number 7. There are a few, there's 6 states ahead of us, Nevada and Florida and California all have pretty high rates of foreclosure, but Michigan continues to be hit harder than nearly all the states in the country by mortgage foreclosure. Over 50% of the homeowners in Michigan are currently underwater in their mortgage. I think most people who listen to the news know that about a quarter of Americans in general across the country owe more on their mortgage than their home is currently worth. In Michigan, it's double that. It's 50% of the people who have mortgages owe more on those mortgage loans than their home is currently worth. To kind of narrow this down to what this looks like in Hillsdale County, over the past 5.5 years, we've had over 1,230 households that have lost their homes to mortgage foreclosure. That translates into 1 in 14 households losing their homes to mortgage foreclosure. And I look at Gary Leininger sitting over there. That doesn't even take into consideration the tax foreclosures, which are not included in those numbers. And the tax foreclosures in Hillsdale County have doubled in the past couple of years. So that's what the picture looks like in terms of numbers. Now, as important as the numbers are the changing nature of the crisis. You know, all of us read in the newspaper, heard on the radio and on television about a year and a half ago that there was this foreclosure crisis. And I think our understanding at the time was that the crisis was really being driven by subprime, very expensive, I'll call them tricky loan products. all kinds of fancy loans. They all boiled down to you didn't put money down, or you put very little money down, there were balloons, all kinds of things that at the end of the day were not good for the person who was borrowing money. Yes, in the beginning, the foreclosure crisis was being driven by subprime mortgages. But what has happened across the country, but particularly in the state of Michigan, is that it's now being driven by unemployment and people having a reduction in their income. So that's a big deal. This is a very different kind of crisis than what we were looking at and trying to solve a year and a half ago. Because it not only has the numbers expanded, but the cross-section of people who are being impacted by this crisis has really expanded. I mean, the safest thing to say is that right now, the mortgage foreclosure crisis is directly impacting people from all walks of life, all education levels, all income levels, in all kinds of neighborhoods, in all values of homes. So this is a problem that is not limited to a particular group of people in a particular area with a particular demographic profile. It is hitting everybody across the board. And that's a big deal, because when you have a crisis like that, you deal with it very differently than if you're talking about something that is relatively isolated. So the changing nature of the crisis is something very, very important to be aware of. This is just a graph. You don't need to look at the numbers. All you need to know is the direction that the lines are going in. And the top line is Jackson County, the middle line is Lenawee, and the bottom line is Hillsdale. And as you can see, the numbers, the populations are different in those three counties, but the direction of the line is moving in the same direction in all three counties. So you add to this picture, which is a pretty challenging picture, you add to that the fact that, and I was totally surprised, taken off guard by this. A couple weeks ago, I was at a conference in Detroit, and the FBI was there. And the guy was at an FBI foreclosure scam task force was presenting. And I learned that day that Michigan, along with a couple other states, a handful of states, is being targeted for mortgage fraud and foreclosure rescue scams. And I thought, this sounds like, on a TV or a soap opera or something. So we're targeted in Michigan? Yeah, we're being targeted in Michigan, and the reason is pretty simple. Because we have so many of us who are unemployed and underemployed, and so many of us who have challenges with the health care that many people are losing when they lose their jobs, that people are really desperate to find a solution to the state. And as a result of that, it makes us fertile ground for someone who wants to take advantage of people who are desperate to find solutions and stay in their homes. So there's a special task force in the state of Michigan that the FBI has put together, and in the materials that we handed out a little bit later, we can talk about how you can make sure that you know what those numbers are if you're taking advantage of, or you think anything is shady about how you may have been treated or someone has been approaching you related to your mortgage, that you don't know the numbers to call. The bottom line with all of it is that this is a crisis that's impacting people of all ages, all walks of life, all income levels, and all My. So, let me take a minute to talk about more specifically how the foreclosure crisis impacts these groups of people. And many of us wear all of these hats, or at least a couple of these hats. First of all, it's probably a no-brainer to think about how foreclosure impacts on the homeowner in the home. So let me just add a little color to it. If you lose your home, then you need to find a place to live. If you're foreclosed on, what that means is that financially, your financial health is impacted because you have a foreclosure on your credit rating. That's going to make it very difficult for you to find an affordable place or any place to live. So the impact on the homeowner that loses the home is, on the one hand, financial, but maybe more importantly, it destabilizes the family, because the family has to move. And if there are children in the family, or if there are elderly people in the family, all of us can just use our heads to understand that it's a bigger deal when you've got to move kids that are going to different school districts, and you're trying to move someone who is no longer in the workforce, who's very attached to their home. It's just traumatizing. So the homeowners who lose their home are impacted financially, and they're impacted in terms of destabilizing their family. But then take it one step further. Think about renters. And often you don't hear much in the media about how renters are impacted by foreclosures. Landlords who own rental properties are being foreclosed on too. The tough part about that for renters is that up until May of this year, renters had no way of knowing that their landlord was in foreclosure until they get an eviction notice on the door of their apartment or the home that they're renting. In May, a law did pass in Washington that gives renters basically another 90 days so that they're not caught off guard and essentially kicked out of the place that they're renting just because they didn't understand and didn't know that the landlord was in foreclosure. So renters are impacted by this just as much as homeowners are impacted by it. And then talk about neighbors and neighborhoods for a minute. I live in Leone Township in Jackson County, and I've lived there on a lake for 22 years, and and we've owned our home outright for about 10 years. Our kids are grown, we're never moving anywhere else. We love it there, we've made it our home. I have a foreclosed property on both sides of me. And to give you an idea, the point I want to make is that if you are a neighbor of a foreclosed property, or you have a foreclosed property anywhere near you, two things happen. Number one, it reduces the value of your home. Without a doubt. That's the financial piece of it. In fact, there's so many foreclosures across the country that there's actually a financial calculation that if you live within 0.6 miles of a foreclosed property, you can bet that your value of your home goes down 0.8%. So there's a financial impact on you as a neighbor. But there's another huge whole world of impacts. Every foreclosed property, for at least the period of time while the property or the home is in foreclosure, is a vacant property. That's just a fact. That's not chance. The foreclosure process takes anywhere from 6 months. Depending upon the size of the property, it can take up to a year. During that period of time, that house, in 99% of cases, is a vacant house. So there are all kinds of challenges with a vacant house or a vacant property. I can give you the example right next door to my house. When the person left, it was pretty much secretly. We didn't know exactly what was happening. The doors were all left open on the house. The garage door was left wide open on the house. We went out and shut the garage door. We wondered what strange. I'm a gardener. I had donated all my plants and helped garden the property over the years that they had been there. And all the wood chips from the path, the owner of the property had friends come pick up the wood chips, take them away, took all the appliances away, actually took a backhoe and took trees out of the property. Now, that's the most bizarre thing I have ever thought of. But I can tell you that I hear stories of all different kinds. When a property is vacant and nobody's living there anymore, there are all kinds of things that can happen with the property. Whether you're in an urban setting or a rural setting and your next door neighbor's 2 miles away from you, it doesn't really much matter. There's nobody living there. There's nobody caring for that property. And the chances of bad things happening are pretty high. So you could talk about, it's an eyesore. That's the simplest thing. It's an eyesore. It doesn't exactly make the neighborhood or your community look great. If you go to the other end of the spectrum, it's also a place where once people realize that it's vacant, crimes can happen. So crime, blight, unsecured properties, all those kinds of things happen with vacant properties and foreclosed properties, at least for the period of the foreclosure, and often for a long period after that, since the housing market isn't exactly freed up yet. Those foreclosed properties are vacant. And as a neighbor, that's why you should care. All these reasons are why you should care. And then local government. How does it impact local government? Well, we all know that local government resources are going down like this. The demand for services are going up like this. And foreclosed properties, when they're vacant, increase the demand for services. I mean, if you can't get anything done in a house that's next door to you and it's sitting there vacant and you've tried everything that you know to do, you're going to call on your local municipality to help you out. And so there are more demands on the local municipalities right at a time when they don't have the resources to have an increase in demand. It also erodes the tax base. So, again, the taxes that pay for basic services for everybody are eroded as a result of foreclosures. And then the community as a whole. Every community in the state of Michigan right now is in a fight for its future. And I am a glass half full optimist, and I am very confident that the Tri-County area of Jackson, Hillsdale, and Lenawee is going to weather these tough times. But I can also tell you that so many community members and leaders are helping to make the community a place where people want to stay, they want to live, they want to start a business, they want people to want to be here. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see how many foreclosed signs, how many vacant houses, how many for sale signs to put two and two together. And it's really
people lose confidence in the community when they see those kinds of signals. So there's a good reason why all of us as community members should care about doing something about this. So that's what it looks like. So let me talk for a second. So what's being done? Quickly at the state level, let me tell you what's being done. There is a Michigan Foreclosure Task Force. It's not part of state government. It is a task force that is a not-for-profit, and what they basically do is they serve as a gathering hub of information that they can send out to local communities to help people in those communities understand what they need to know, what they need to do, and how they can help us make some of the changes that have to occur if we are going to slow down the number of foreclosures and soften their impacts on neighborhoods and the community. So there's a state task force. One of the successes of that state task force is last July, we were able to pass in Lansing a state law in Michigan, and other states don't have this, so thank goodness we've got this. There's a state law in Michigan which basically guarantees that a lender has to contact a homeowner and give them 90 days to work out something on that mortgage, to try to make that mortgage work before the lender can actually foreclose. Julie Laughlin is going to speak a little bit later, our foreclosure counselor, in a little bit more detail about that. But the reason I bring it up now is because that state task force has had an impact. And local task forces, like the one that I'm leading right now, that you are really all a part of in many ways, are really important to have a unified voice to make some of those things happen, like that 90-day law. So at the local level, what are we doing? Community Action Agency is mission. Many of you may know, many of you may not know, but Community Action Agency's mission has been to traditionally work with the working poor. That is their mission. And what happened in the last couple of years is that they were seeing, through their housing counselors, a growing number of people coming in for help on foreclosures. They were seeing the numbers increase, but they were also seeing the fact that what I talked about a little bit earlier, that this is not something that's just hitting the working poor. This is hitting all kinds of people. And so Community Action Agency had the foresight to say, you know what? We can't deal with this just by ourselves as an agency. We really need to form some partnerships with businesses and government and other not-for-profits to see if we can get a handle on this and keep people in their homes, slow the number of foreclosures, and soften the impacts on neighborhoods. And that's when the idea of a coalition was born. I started in this work in July, and since July, the coalition has 42 partners, supporting partners across the 3-county area. It is a 3-county coalition. The reason it's 3 counties is that some of the work is most effectively done and most efficiently done as a 3-county region. Some of it is done best just county by county because each one of the 3 counties has very different histories and very different profiles. What we do all have in common is we're all suffering from foreclosures right now. What you see up on the screen is the 4 areas of our work. Prevention, preventing those foreclosures. Keep people in their homes, slow down the number of foreclosures. Intervening. You know, when we can't stop a foreclosure from happening, and that happens often, we need to be able to point people towards resources and give them good advice about the options that are in front of them. Because believe it or not, even if it turns out that you have to be, the foreclosure happens and you lose your home, you still have options and you still have decisions to make. And so that's part of what we can help you with. Stabilization, stabilizing neighborhoods that have large numbers of foreclosures and making sure that neighborhoods that have been stable for a long period of time aren't negatively impacted by foreclosures. The last area is all about reinvestment. So what do we do with all these foreclosed properties? We want to be smart as a community about how we reuse them. We don't want to just, leave it up to whim. We're going to end up with a lot of pieces of property, and we need to be smart, and we need to use them in the community's best interest. What have we done to date? Very quickly, the kinds of things that we've done is to get good information out. Town hall meetings are a great example. We have printed materials. There's a brochure that I hope you picked up outside. There's a flyer on one side, information for homeowners, the other side, information for renters. But one of the best resources that we have is we have a website, which is www.communityforeclosurecoalition.org. It's got a shortened version of it on the brochure, so you don't have to remember it. But the deal is this. That website contains all localized information. In other words, you don't have to dial some 800 number that's in Washington or anywhere else and work your way through a voicemail tree to find a certified counselor. It's got all localized information and everything you'd want to know as a homeowner, a renter, or a neighbor. With that, I'm going to, there are a couple other things that we've done, but I want to move on and get to the panel. So what I'm going to do is, if you'd be patient with me for a minute, I want to show you a 3-minute video, and the reason I'm showing it right now, before the panel speaks, is because I think the video really does a great job of making the point that there are so many scams out there right now. It is so important that you know what to look for and that you get directed to people who are actually legitimate, who can give you good information and good advice.
The financial problem started when I was injured at work. There was no money coming in. I had to figure something out quick.
We received our letter in default around Christmas time.
There's nothing worse than having the fear that you're about to lose your home. The desperation that goes along with that is very intense for just anyone. We did go out to see if we could find some foreclosure prevention companies, but during the conversation and meeting with them, we found out that the first thing that they wanted up front from us was money before we even filled out the application. There's lots of companies that were offering the services and making a lot of promises to us that they could save our home. I really just didn't feel comfortable with them at all, and I just decided to take another path.
There are a lot of companies claiming that they can stop the foreclosure process or help you modify your loan. You should be extremely cautious of people who make any guarantee, ask for money up front, or tell you to make your mortgage payments to them.
I called one of the loan modification specialists. They said they could help. They needed a $500 deposit and then $3,000 after that. They said they had attorneys working on their side. They would talk to the mortgage company. They took my money and they didn't do anything for us at all.
We were desperate to save our house, and I guess that's why we believed in them.
It was just a scam.
All of a sudden on a Saturday night, our front doorbell rings. I open the door and there's this lady on our front step talking at the top of her voice saying, "You're going into foreclosure, you're going to lose your home." Well, I immediately asked her to leave. I then called my servicer and they didn't know anything about her. Apparently it was a scam.
Unfortunately, there are a lot of scam artists out there. Some even look to be affiliated with the government. Their websites have official-looking logos and graphics, and their names include words like federal. Hope Now connects you with counselors that provide free foreclosure prevention assistance.
When I met with the counselor that Hope Now connected me with, I was a little suspicious when I first went in there. I noticed that she didn't ask me for any money. I really felt that there was someone finally here that could help me now. I do believe that Hope Now saved my house. If it wasn't for them, I don't know where I would be. We probably wouldn't be sitting here today.
Our counselor was so professional, I was impressed. She looked at our entire situation and helped guide us through the whole process. Everything that she has done was free, no cost to us.
Time is of the essence when it comes to the risk of foreclosure. No one can guarantee you can get a loan modification or that they can stop the foreclosure process. But if you are in trouble, the first thing to do is contact your mortgage company and get housing counseling. You can do this by contacting the Homeowners Hope Hotline at 888-995-HOPE. The sooner you call, the sooner you can get peace of mind.
It's very scary knowing you could lose your house. You feel like you're all alone in the world. It's hard to know who you can trust, but you can't let that fear lead you down the wrong path with people who might be out to scam you. There are real people offering real help, and they're at 888-995-HOPE.
One of the reasons we formed this coalition is because it's very confusing to see all these 800 numbers that you see on billboards. Hope Now is totally legitimate, but there is absolutely no reason that you need to call an 888 number that's somewhere else that's going to just take you 5 minutes or so to go through a voicemail tree when you can have all the direct numbers right here. So that's part of what the coalition has done with the printed materials. We have here in Hillsdale County a HUD-certified foreclosure counselor, exactly the type of counselor that they're talking about in the Hope Now. And I'm going to introduce her, Julie Laughlin, who works here with the Community Action Agency. And Julie, I'm going to give you the mic.
I just want to let everyone know that I grew up here in Hillsdale County. I've been away for a little bit, but I'm really excited to be back working in Hillsdale County because since I was born and raised here, it's just I really know a lot of what's going on in the county. As Nita said, I am the foreclosure prevention counselor here at CAA, and it is true, I see people from all walks of life. Some that make real good money, some that are underemployed, some that are just receiving unemployment, and some that are not receiving unemployment. So just my role here as the foreclosure prevention counselor, I've been doing it for a year. And on the whole time that I've been here, I've only had 4 homes that have gone into foreclosure. And the reasons that they've gone into foreclosure is they came in too late. So the best thing that you can do for yourself is either contact your lender immediately, even before you're late on your payments. But if you are late on your payments, you need to contact them as soon as possible. That's really in your best interest to keep your house out of foreclosure, is to be in contact. And what do people really, the first thing they don't do is they don't answer their phone. Answer your phone. Talk to your lender, let them know what's going on with you. And if that's not something that you're comfortable with, then that's where you can come in to see me and I can advocate for you on your behalf. Because a lot of lenders, it's not our local banks. Our local banks are really good about, working one-on-one with the community, but it's the banks that are not here, the ones that are in all the other states, and you don't get the same person every single time. Well, I will tell you, I don't get the same person every single time either, but I do understand the lingo that they use, and they use all types. When you are calling your lender on your own, you want to ask for the loss mitigation department. The first department you're going to get is either customer service or collections. Customer service, you tell them what you want, chances are they're going to transfer you to collections anyway, but that's not the department you want. You want loss mitigation. Loss mitigation is the department that makes the decisions on what can be done with your loan. But if you do come in to see me, it's about a 2-hour process. That seems like a really long time, but we get a lot accomplished in that time. The first thing that I do is I conduct a confidential assessment of your financial situation. I analyze your income, your expenses, and then I also ask that you bring in your loan so that I can actually review your loan. Most people think they have a fixed rate on their loan, and a lot of people that come in to see me, that's not what they have. So I do ask for you to bring in your loan documents so that I can review them to see if that's actually the loan that you have, and then plus I can review it to see if there's something that is that's been done illegally with your loan, and then I can refer you to legal services if that's where it needs to go. What I do is you bring in all this information, we assess what you bring in, the things that you need to bring in, and this actually is listed on the website, the Community Foreclosure Coalition website, is these are things that you actually can do on your own, but if you don't want to do it on your own, again, that's when you come see me. They're going to want your tax returns, bank statements, proof of any income that you have coming in, whatever that may be. If it's unemployment, Social Security, if you are working, your pay stubs, whatever that may be. Again, your loan or your refinancing closing documents, I like to review those. An updated mortgage statement. Okay, a lot of times that has a lot of information on there. All your monthly expenses. We do have to put together a financial statement for the bank. They will ask you for that. Some people go, oh, I don't want to do that, but you have to. They want to see where your money's going. You need, the other things I ask for is your correspondence or letters that you receive from your mortgage company. And I'll get into a little bit more of that in a little, just a couple of minutes. Your homeowner's declaration page and your property tax bill. Now, if you happen to have a loan with a local bank, they usually don't ask for all that stuff because they already have that kind of thing on file. They know what's going on with your loan. And if you have listed your house for sale, then I would need your realtor listing agreement. And if you have claimed bankruptcy, then I need your discharge papers also. And if you're doing this on your loan, these are the things that the bank's going to ask for. The next step that I would do after I would review it, obviously, we go into discussion of, do you want to keep your home or do you not? Most people that come in obviously want to keep their home, but there are a few that don't, but most do. And if you do, there are options available for you to keep your home, which possibly could be a forbearance plan. I think in your paperwork it talks about what those are.
Brochure and on the website too. Everything that she's telling you is on the website, just so you don't feel like you're going to have to write all.
Yeah, you don't have to write this all down. Go to the website. It's all listed there. There's also a combination where they can do a forbearance and a repayment plan, or the loan modification. The loan modification is the big one that the servicers or lenders or mortgage companies, again, those terms are all interchangeable there. That's mostly what I try to do for people is the loan modification, if that's what's right for them. You can do a short sale or a deed in lieu, and those are both options if you don't want to keep your home. That keeps you out of foreclosure. Foreclosure does hit your credit, pretty hard. The next step that I would do is I would actually contact your lender, your servicer, your mortgage company, and I'd advocate and negotiate what is the best possible option that you qualify for. A lot of people are online. They get information about all these government programs that are out there. Well, you might not actually qualify for that, but I can help decide if you do qualify for that, or if we send all your information in and the bank says, sorry, you don't qualify, well, that's where I come in and I negotiate for you that, yeah, you do qualify. Because what do a lot of people do if they don't? They just give up. Well, we don't want you to give up. I'm going to do the best job that I can to keep you in your home if that's what your wish is. After that, if it's necessary, I would refer you to legal services, which is free. If I suspect that there was anything, legally wrong when you actually took the loan out in the first place. And then we also refer you to other community resources that might be available that would help you through this, the tough time that you're going through. So that's kind of what I would do in the 2 hours that you come in. But it is important when you do come in that you do bring all those documents. If you bring everything in, chances are that day I can contact your servicer. Need to talk a little bit about the 90-day foreclosure law that was passed July 5th for Michigan. And there is a timeline for foreclosure, and I will tell you the servicers do it all different. There's no 30 days you're going to get this, 60 days, 90 days. It's different. I've got people that I've been working with, since March. Actually, I had one I've been working with since December, and they still are not in foreclosure, and they have not made a payment in almost a year. So it's just what your bank does. So I just want to make people understand that it's not a cut and dry situation. I think a lot of people think it is, and it isn't. So don't give up, because there might be an option out there available for you. And I will do my best to get what is best for you. But the informal foreclosure timeline is in 30 days, if you haven't made a payment, you're delinquent. And that's, you're going to get phone calls. Usually you get the phone calls when you're 13, 14 days late. They call you. And that's collections calling you. That's not loss mitigation. Okay? 30 to 90 days, then you're going to receive a demanding letter that says, you've got to pay this amount to reinstate your loan. And then anywhere from 90 days on, is when you could get the foreclosure, the intent to foreclose, where it actually is turned over to an attorney. And that's where a lot more fees are added on, and they have an intent to foreclose. You will receive, in the state of Michigan now, with the 90-day foreclosure law, you will receive information about the foreclosure. You'll get a letter regular mail, and you'll also get a letter certified mail. And then the other way that they notify you is they put it in the newspaper. Okay, so even though, yes?
So the 90-day notice that they give you, that she talked about earlier, that they have to be given 90 days after the notice of foreclosure, right? Before in order to try to rectify the foreclosure. That 90 days does not kick in until after they're notified of the actual circumstance of the foreclosure, right?
Okay, when it starts is the date that they send that letter out. That's when the 90, that's what
I think the confusion is that there's a 90-day period in the regular process, forget about the law. Then there's the law that basically says you have 90 days from the date that this letter was mailed to you.
The foreclosure letter, right? Not the
Yes,
late notice letter.
Julie, would you
Sure, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. This is getting legal, so I don't want to...
Just real
Karen Looseway is a legal services attorney who actually services Hillsdale County.
Okay.
Karen.
Hi.
She's legitimate.
Yes. You don't pay me. That makes me very legit. And you don't just get what you pay for. So anyway, what I was going to say is this new law is very specific. What it specifically says is this is a notification that you are to within the next 14 days make contact with the servicer or the attorney that sent this. And if you don't, then they can go ahead and do what's called foreclosure by advertisement. And this is where it gets tricky. Michigan is one of the very few states that does not make a mortgage company go through the court system to do a foreclosure. Court systems slow things down. Court systems bring things under scrutiny by a court, and the lawyers can stop it and slow it and, take a look at it. But advertisement, all they have to do is for 4 consecutive weeks, I believe it is, insert it in the newspaper and post at your home. And if at the end of that time you have not paid the amount that's in the rest of your mortgage, and a foreclosure means they've accelerated that whole balance that you owe. If you haven't paid that, the house then goes up for sale in a sheriff's sale. And after that, then you have a certain period of time in which you're allowed to occupy the house. It's still your house and you can redeem it, but you're running out of options. Now, what's going on with this new law is this. You get that notice. It says you've got 14 days to make contact. It will have community action in our area. It'll have community actions number in there because they're certified housing counselors. It may have legal services in there. In Jackson, some of the lawyers are putting our number in there. We get that contact from you, and we have a prepared fax that we zap off to the attorneys to let them know we're kicking in on part of this client. That's what kicks the 90-day period into effect. If you fail to do that 14-day contact, you don't get the 90 days. So that's very critical, and that's why I jumped up to make sure everybody understood that.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. One other thing that's tricky, and this is on the website too, is you'd think that letter would come from your lender or your servicer. So you might be looking for the name of the company that holds your mortgage. It won't come from them. It's going to come from their attorney. And there are 5 major legal firms in the state of Michigan whose names are listed on our website. So you need to be looking for, first of all, you need to open all your mail. We didn't say that earlier.
Yeah, I was going to.
You need to open all your mail because you don't want to take the chance. If you don't open some of these critical letters, you're not protected by the new laws. But this particular letter is going to come from a legal firm,
that's been hired by your lender, not from your lender. And the names of those firms are on our website so that they can kind of be an alert for you if you see anything coming from those 5 law firms.
Right. That's one of the most important things you want to do is open your mail, because you do get 14 days from the date on the letter, not the date that you receive it. You give me a phone call, like Karen said, I have a fax, I take the information and I fax it right back into the attorney. I actually have 10 days from the day that you contact me to do that, but I do it immediately. I don't wait around. I do it immediately. So after I contact them, then the attorney has, or whoever they have as the designated agent, has 90 days to come up with some sort of a workout, modification, whatever it may be, to keep you in your home. But that pushes the servicer in the bank to do something within 90 days instead of taking 6 months, 8 months, or a year to get something settled. So just open your mail up. If you get that letter, contact me. That's how you can get that 90-day, I guess, stay is what is what it looks like. And then with that fax, it sets up that the client or the borrower wants to have a meeting. Okay, that does not mean that meeting has to be face-to-face. It can be a phone call. Actually, I'm the one that has to call to set that up. That would be done here in Hillsdale County. Now, on the letter, as they were saying that it would list Community Action Agency, it actually lists us as Jackson. So when you call that, then you have just tell them that you're in Hillsdale County and they'll direct you back here. Or you can just call CAA and as for me.
On the brochures that you got and on the flyers that you got.
Right. So, is there any other questions or anything on that part?
Question. Julie, what happens if the financial institution doesn't want to cooperate?
Well, that gets into the legality of it then. That's above me.
There's 2 kinds of non-cooperation. I mean, they may determine somebody's not eligible for a workout, and that's fine. They're allowed to determine that.
Right.
But if they skip doing this notice, then they must go to judicial foreclosure. They don't get the luxury of an advertisement foreclosure.
Answer that? Okay, they wanted me to touch a little bit on the Hamp and the Harp program, which are the federal modification programs. And again, just because you have a loan doesn't mean that you qualify for these. There's a lot of things that go into the qualification, the guidelines. Just kind of briefly, the Hamp program, that's the Home Affordable Modification Program. And for that, what that targets is your housing, they're calling it debt to income. I like to call it your housing cost. I think it makes it a little bit more understandable for people. Your housing cost is your principal, your interest, your taxes, your insurance, and any association fees that you may have. That amount has to be they have to be able to get it to 31% of what your income is. But there's also other things that they take into account, but that's one of the first things. The HARP program, that's the Home Affordable Refi program. And that's where you can refi your loan that you have right now without any added cost to it. But again, you have to qualify for those. If it's an in-house loan modification, they have to reach a housing cost target of 38%. Okay, that's just kind of the briefest way that I can put it out there to you. In the in-house ones, they can take your loan down to 3%. That is the floor that they can target it to for at least 5 years. Okay, and they can extend it out to 40 years. So those are kind of some of the other things that can happen with that. They can reduce or eliminate late fees. They're supposed to be trying to do everything to get you at that 38% if it's an in-house. If it's the Hamp program, it's 31%. Okay, they also take into account your loan to value on your home. So if you're somebody, that comes in and, you're upside down, they're going to try to work with you as much as possible. But again, that's when they look at all the financial stuff. But I just want you to know there's hope. There's still hope in whatever situation that you're in, that it doesn't go into foreclosure. When we if you are in the process where you got that 90-day, or they call it the 90-day law letter, if you get that, we do request, the calculations and everything that the bank uses to see if you qualify before it goes into foreclosure. Another thing I just want to quickly touch on is beware of scams and mortgage fraud that's out there. I cannot stress enough, you do not have to pay to have your loan modified. It is free. So I will never contact you if I look in the paper and I see that you're listed on there for foreclosure, I am not going to contact you. That's just not what we do, because if somebody's contacting you, chances are it's a scam. You do not have to pay. I've had clients that have come in and I have stressed that, and then they end up calling me back. Well, they said they would do this and I gave them $1,000. Put that on your mortgage.
The thing that I think is so surprising is that a lot of these scam artists, they just look totally legitimate.
Yeah,
they look totally legitimate. I mean, they're dressed like a professional. They have they use all the right language. So all of their materials look great. And they're not legit.
Yeah, and they're really good on the phone too, And the thing is if you're even headed towards foreclosure, you're already stressed out, and they know that, and that's what they go in for the kill on is, oh, you say that you're going to do this. If I send you a couple $100s. They're not going to do any more for you than what I do for you, and chances are they're not going to do anything because they're charging you. They just want your money.
It's my privilege to be here this evening to be a part of this discussion. In 1999, the Michigan legislature passed Public Act 123, which substantially changed tax foreclosure in the state of Michigan. Made a very significant change in the statute. And so we've been operating under this new law since 1999, and the things that I'm going to have to say today all apply, under this statute. Many things that we do, we're required to do by the statute. Fortunately, the statute does give us some flexibility, particularly in dealing with property owners who have delinquent taxes and find themselves in a real financial hardship and are unable to pay the taxes to prevent the foreclosure action from taking place. Just quickly, I'd like to walk you through, how we're dealing right now with parcels that have 2007 delinquent taxes, because this will be the next year's tax that will move through the foreclosure process. Those taxes became delinquent to the county treasurer on March the 1st, 2008. So as of this date, the property owner has already had a year and a half to pay the delinquent taxes to us. And up to this point in time, we've been required to send them certain notices as prescribed by statute. In addition to the required notices, we also send some additional notices to them that the law does not require. Simply, urging them to pay the taxes to avoid the foreclosure that is forthcoming if the tax remains unpaid. We encourage people to make partial payments on delinquent taxes, actually from day one of the delinquency. I mean, we'll take as little as $50 or $100 per payment, which gives people that are having a financial struggle the opportunity, to work on that tax bill. It's not like they got to come in and give us a check for $500 or $1,000 or $2,000 in one lump sum. Okay. So at this point in time, then, we're at a point where here in December and January, we will be sending out a letter required by the statute to anybody who has a recorded interest in a property with 2007 delinquent taxes. And included in that notice will be some specific things that the law requires. Property owner will be notified of the last day to pay those taxes to avoid foreclosure. And this information is true of all 83 counties in the state. It's not just specific with Hillsdale County. So if you own property, you know somebody who owns property in Lenawee or Jackson or Branch County, this information is the same in every county in the state. The last day to pay the taxes to avoid foreclosure on a 2007 tax is March the 31st, 2010. Included in that letter, which must be sent by registered mail, is also the total amount that is due on that parcel. In addition to that, there will be 2 dates in there. One for a show cause hearing that the county treasurer is required to hold prior to the court hearing date. Unlike foreclosure by financial institutions, we actually have to go to a court hearing date in the circuit court to ask the judge to foreclose on our parcels that have unpaid delinquent taxes. So that show cause hearing, the purpose of that show cause hearing is for the property owner to present any legal or financial reasons why the property should not be foreclosed. And then also the date, time, and location for the circuit court foreclosure hearing, which in this county is held before Circuit Judge Smith. And typically that hearing date for us is the last week in February each year. So this is an annual process that we go through 1 year at a time. In our situation, unlike the bank foreclosures, in order to redeem the property from the foreclosure process for delinquent taxes, you only have to pay that 1 year's tax that is due. You don't have to address subsequent years. For example, the folks, generally speaking, that have a 2007 delinquent tax will pretty likely also have delinquent taxes for 2008 and 2009. But they don't have to pay those taxes to keep it from going to our foreclosure. They only have to pay 1 year at a time. Okay, then more specifically, what is a property owner, what should they do to avoid foreclosure if they get this certified letter from the county treasurer? One would be to pay the amount that is due. So that would be one way to stop the foreclosure process. Okay, let's say that in the event, a property owner is in a situation where they don't have the money, or they don't believe they're going to have the money by that March the 31st, 2010 deadline. Then, in our case, we want them to call the county treasurer's office and set an appointment where they can come in and meet with me to apply for that 1 year extension to pay the taxes based on a financial hardship. And if the 1 year extension is granted, this stops the foreclosure process and it gives the property owner an additional 1 year to pay those taxes. And we set up a payment plan with the property owner to get that accomplished. Now, some of the information we need to give that 1 year extension are some of the same kinds of documents Julie talked about. If you're trying to get a loan assistance from a financial institution to get a loan modification or relief in terms of dealing with a mortgage through a financial institution, we want copies of the prior 2 years' tax returns. But frequently, we encounter people who are senior citizens at the very bottom of the financial structure, and so they're not getting a tax return. That's fine. We're more than willing to work with people even if they don't have 2 years worth of tax returns to bring us. Sometimes we find people who have been working and they've not filed a tax return for 3 or 4 years. We're still willing to work with people. And in that event, then we want them to bring us copies of W-2s or Social Security documents, unemployment payment information, something that gives us a feel for what their income level has been the last couple of years. The property owner will be asked to fill out a 2-page application for financial hardship. And I'm more than willing to help them fill that out. And again, it's confidential information. On the spot, once they fill out that application, I will review the application and conduct a personal interview to determine if the property owner should receive that 1-year extension. We go over such things as, if they've not been filing a tax return, we encourage them to do that. And many times, if they file a tax return, they will be eligible for some assistance, both from the state and potentially even the federal level, for some dollars that they can then apply towards those delinquent taxes. Such things as a homestead property tax credit in the state of Michigan. Not only for the current year, but they can even go back at least 2 or 3 years if they've not been filing tax returns. Home heating credit dollars that may be available to them. At the federal level would be potentially some earned income credit money. And even at the local level, some folks who have little or no income might very well qualify for a poverty exemption, which they would need to apply for with their township or city board of review. I don't have the authority to give those. They must come from the local board of review. And it can be a full poverty exemption, or it could be a 50% poverty exemption. Could be anywhere from 90% to a full exemption. So that's something that many folks need to look into. Okay, so once we've gone over their situation, talked about a payment plan, and structure every payment plan to fit the needs of the property owner. I have some business people who we've given 1-year extensions to this last year. And I happen to run a small business myself. I have a small farm. And so every business person especially, their cash flow situation is different. We can't just say we're going to take this bill and divide it by 12 and they got to make 1/12 of that every month, because they may be in a situation where, certain times of the year, their expenses are high, their income is low, and so a plan like that doesn't work for them. So we tailor a payment plan to everybody's unique situation. Before they leave that day, in at least 95% of the cases, I'll make a decision right then and there whether I'm going to grant this 1-year extension or turn them down. If I do turn them down, then they have the right to appeal to the circuit judge in that judicial court hearing. So that's one of the reasons why officially our hearing must be at least a week before the circuit court hearing. Now, what we've encouraged people to do this past year, and we're going to do the same thing this year, because we really got covered up this last year by the number of people who came in and applied for the 1-year extension, as we want people to call us as soon as they receive that certified letter. And we'll start setting appointments right after the first of the year in January, even though that official hearing date won't occur sometime until February. If I wait till that hearing date, there's no way that I can meet with all of the people that will be making this request. Okay, so if I grant the 1-year extension, and this last year I had 45 people make requests of us, we granted extensions to 44 of them on 64 parcels in the county. The only one that I turned down was a man who lived in the suburbs east of Cleveland, owning some rental property here in Hillsdale. And I asked him over the phone, I said, "What's your income on your 1040? He says, "Well, somewhere between $100,000 and $125,000. I said, "Sir," I said, "you do not qualify under our hardship policy." I said, you need to find some other way to come up with the money to pay those taxes by the 31st of March. But he was clearly an exception to the rule. Okay, so after the appointment is finished, we make the decision. I give them a handwritten copy of the agreement and also the payment plan. I will help the property owner communicate with their lender about the 1-year extension and the payment plan. Many mortgage holders want that kind of information. I'm certainly willing to do that. We will also review on an annual basis that extension. I mean, this is something that must be done annually. Each year stands on its own. And so in this county, we're more than willing to work with the property owner consecutive years. If their financial situation hasn't changed, they're still having a struggle, we're willing to renew this extension on an annual basis, year by year, and help people get back on solid footing. And this extension and payment plan is available to small business owners as well as homeowners. In some counties, I'm not sure that's the case, but it's always been the case in Hillsdale County. We've never exempted small business owners from the opportunity to get the 1-year extension. To give you just a thumbnail sketch of what's happened, historically in our county, 2004 delinquent taxes, which we would have gone through the foreclosure process and during the early winter of 2007, and foreclosure would have become final March 31st of 2007. We had 22 parcels that we foreclosed on. We didn't have one person come in and request an extension. Not one. 1 year later, 2005 delinquent taxes would have been the winter of 2008. We foreclosed on 19 parcels in the county. We had 30 parcels that we granted the 1-year extension to that were owned by 22 property owners. And then this past year, with the 2006 delinquent taxes, the winter of 2009, we foreclosed on 44 parcels. We granted extensions on 64 parcels with 44 property owners, and about 10 of those were business owners. So there's no question that the situation has gotten worse in Hillsdale County. With the 2007 taxes that we're starting to work on now, we have about 150 more delinquent parcels than we had a year ago of 2006 taxes. So I'm confident that we're going to have a lot more requests for the 1-year extension this year than we even had a year ago, and we're gearing up now, preparing to work with those people.
I think the overall message here is that not every county treasurer has done as much proactively to help prevent tax foreclosures as your county treasurer here in Hillsdale County. Anthony Green is here with us from Washtenaw County. Anthony is with the Poverty Prevention Project and also the Foreclosure Prevention Project. He's a legal services attorney who is working with our 3-county region and beyond. And Anthony's going to talk a little some specifics related particularly to the scams and what services are available free to people with the legal aspects of foreclosure. Anthony?
Yeah, thank you very much. As Nita just indicated, I am an attorney with the Legal Services of South Central Michigan. I am working within the context of the Michigan Foreclosure Prevention Project. I'm sorry. The Michigan Foreclosure Prevention. Sorry about that. I'm blasting everyone out. Okay. And that's a project that is funded by various private funders, and our job is to assist people who are going through the process of foreclosure. And there are 7 organizations that are all receiving Michigan Foreclosure Prevention Project monies. Legal Aid and Defender Association, which is the Wayne County and Macomb County, the metropolitan Detroit area. There's our organization, Legal Services of South Central Michigan, and Legal Aid of Western Michigan. Several agencies are receiving this funding. And my job is I am a mortgage foreclosure prevention attorney in the sense that when someone calls our office and they say, look, I'm being foreclosed on, the first thing that we do is we say, well, let me review all of your closing documents, because what people do not understand is that sometimes mortgage companies make lots of errors in terms of the preparation of the loan documents, and not just the preparation of loan documents. Many of these lenders are predatory lenders. They've oftentimes charged more fees and made more charges than what they ought to have charged. And so never feel that perhaps I should just give my keys up and move out as soon as I get a foreclosure notice. The first thing you ought to do is contact either the Legal Services of South Central Michigan agency, or you should contact a foreclosure counselor within the... Julie is a great person to contact because they can give you information. Number one, they can let you know exactly how much time you have left. Many people feel as soon as they get the foreclosure notice, hey, I'm out of here. Well, that's not true. Upon receiving your foreclosure notice or having it tacked onto your home and having a sale, there's a 6-month period that you have to redeem the property or to purchase the property back from the person who purchased it at the sheriff's sale. And perhaps someone has talked about that, but it's a very lengthy process. And even before you begin that process, you have to receive what's called a 14-day notice that will give you an opportunity to negotiate and enter into a loan modification in order to avoid the foreclosure process. And that process takes 90 days, and that's before your 6 months. So it's a total 9-month period that you're given automatically by law. And oftentimes, the lenders hire attorneys who make errors and mistakes, and I wouldn't even describe them as so much mistakes as just sometimes they try to bypass the legal process. If they do that, then you certainly want to talk to someone in my office, because our job is to find out what your legal argument is, what is your legal position, and how best we can keep you in that property to give you a fighting chance to stay there and continue living where you may have been living for years. Okay? So there's a foreclosure prevention attorney who works or operates within each of the agencies who are a part of the Mortgage Foreclosure Prevention Project. Now, I also want to talk a little bit about the rescue scams. I don't know if anyone has touched upon these at all, but the rescue scams are a blight.
The examples are the ones that, just because you walked in, we've touched on them, but we need the examples are the ones that we really want to hear.
Well, the ones that have been used most recently involve what's called the scam, where you have someone who's going to help you stay in your home. Okay? And that's the foreclosure specialist scam. Now, what these individuals will do is they'll call you and they'll say, look, they've actually gone to the newspaper and reviewed the section that deals with legal notices. In those legal notices, they find various homes that have been that are into foreclosure. They contact the owners of those homes and they say, look, I can assist you. I can contact your lender, and I can work out a modification for you. Well, there's a problem with that. Number one, that service is free in the state of Michigan. Again, this young lady here can do that without any cost whatsoever. So when someone says all you have to do is pay a small fee, red flag should go up and say, look, that's not the case. And you should also visit our website, the Michigan Foreclosure Prevention website, which I think is listed on this particular brochure, and it'll give you all the information you need in dealing with these guys. And at least it will direct you either to our agency or to this young lady here. And you should always talk to someone before giving up any money to rescue your home. About 99.9% of these companies that offer this service are not legitimate. They are trying to get your cash, and they're not going to help you at all. There's also what we call the lease buyback scam. Now, this scam typically occurs when an individual cannot obtain traditional funding from a bank. If they're having difficulty receiving traditional funding from a bank, there'll oftentimes be an investor who will say, look, turn your house over to me. Sign a deed, give me your home. I will prepare a lease, and you can lease from me. And I will give you an option to purchase the property at the end of a certain period, definite. Now, the problem with this is that oftentimes these people can never get refinanced again. So they can never exercise the option. And what you have is they become tenants in their own home. And that is another very strong scam that we're seeing in a lot of different jurisdictions. And you want to be leery of that. Be leery of anyone who's saying, just sign your home over to me. And then, of course, you have the traditional bait and switch scam. The bait and switch scam involves a individual who says, just as the lease buyback scam, I can assist you. I can help you stay in your home. Let me get a loan and I'll loan that money to you. Well, what happens is usually there's never anything in writing between the individual who is going to allegedly help you and the individual who needs the help. They'll just indicate to you that you need to arrive at a particular location on a particular day to sign some papers. What the individual who owns the home doesn't realize is that they're actually turning over their house to the person who loaned them the money. And he's not giving you a lease or an option to buy. He's simply taking your house. And he might rent it out to you. I've seen cases where they rented it out for 30 days and then evicted the individual. And that's usually when we see these scams, when they're being evicted by the very villain who took their home. And that's one of the worst bait and switches. It's a terrible scam, and it happens more often than you realize. Oftentimes, the primary victims in these scams are senior citizens. You have individuals, and the scam that primarily plagues our senior citizens is the scam where someone actually loans them cash, okay, and then gives them a lease. We see that a great deal, but there are some mortgage companies that will also scam senior citizens, and the lure that they use is the reverse mortgage. Let me give you a reverse mortgage. I'll give you cash up front. Might be $15,000, $17,000. You know, our senior citizens struggle day to day because they live on fixed incomes. And so when you offer someone $17,000, many say, well, that's great because that'll help me pay this bill and that bill, and I've got medication costs. And so what you find is that they will take the individual's information, and they will have the individual sign over not necessarily their home, but they will have them enter into a loan with fees and charges that are excessive. Okay? And that's another scam that you need to watch out for, and our senior citizens especially. Senior citizens are constantly being bombarded in the mail by lenders who want to give them this benefit and that benefit. And so when someone calls our office and they say, well, I got this in the mail, 99% of the time I just throw it away, because these people are soliciting you. And 9 out of 10 times, it's a very, very bad situation in terms of high cost, high fees, and mortgages that the person can never pay back. Yes?
Okay. With reverse mortgages, there's usually one bank in an area that is, the government has certified them to do
That's correct.
reverse mortgage.
Right.
Are people safe doing it with that?
They are, actually. Not 9 out of 10 times. There are actually good reverse mortgages. But again, if you want to go that route, I would talk to a foreclosure counselor, someone who's trained to know exactly what type of loans are best for you. And they can at least steer you in the right direction towards a government-backed company or a local company that's well known in the community.
Actually, one of the things in the brochure and on the website too is a definition of a reverse mortgage, and really the most important thing to know about them is they're very expensive. They end up being very expensive for people.
That's right.
And the place in the Tri-County area where you would want to go to get more information about that is Green Path Solutions, which is also on our foreclosure coalition.
The fees are usually pretty high with a reverse mortgage, higher than normal. So, any other questions from anyone else regarding the role of our office? Our offices, we have several offices. The office that covers this particular area is located in Jackson, but actually there's a center here, correct? And Karen is the managing attorney for that office. Yes.
As far as these scams you're talking about, people that initiate these scams, they lose their home to these. Are these scams? I mean, they're tremendously, they're horrible to even think about.
Yeah.
Are they illegal?
Many of them may be illegal, especially the bait and switch. If they're felonious. A lot of times, the police officers may describe them as larceny by trick, and they are crimes, actually. And in fact, fraud is a crime.
So they can take possession of the person's home by these bait and switches, but can the person in turn report them legally to the authorities and their home be returned to them?
You bet they can. Well, yeah. Well, they can bring charges. They can request that the police investigate this company. But the way they're going to get the home back in their hands is they have to bring a civil claim. And that's what our office does.
So this isn't just a quick turnaround for these guys that are doing it.
Not at all.
They're not just trying to get a hold of the home for a quick sale to somebody else and then be gone before nobody can do anything about what they're doing.
Well, that does occur. Sometimes there's a quick turnaround. Sometimes they'll do a bait and switch and then they'll sell it to somebody else. But you have to track the transactions. And so it's never too late to go after it. Because that transaction is that transaction. The statute of limitations on that type of activity, I believe, is 3 years for fraud. Okay? And I would even say it's 6 years because it's also contractual, right? Yeah. So you can get them. I mean, they just can't leave and just not, you can't do anything about it.
You know, another thing, the FBI is a player in all of this too. And,
oh, yes.
And their number in there is an important one to remember, because what they've taken to doing lately is to, if you are suspicious that something like that's going on and you notify the FBI, they actually want to have those, they want to be there when those papers are signed. They have undercover agents.
They sure do.
It sounds like the movies, but they have undercover agents, and they actually want to be in the closing. And they have successfully been able to identify these criminals.
This is theft.
By being in those closings.
I work for the Michigan Department of Corrections.
Oh,
yes.
Well.
Send them to us. We got
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, this is theft. They're stealing someone's home. And they're doing it by trick. Yeah.
I'm going to steal that.
You need
time
more?
for questions and answers too.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. But I want to make sure Phil gets a little time to speak here. Phil, say a few words for us. Phil is with, let me just introduce him by saying that the local banks are not the bad guys in this whole picture. No, I mean, it's interesting, you know. I mean, I have to say that the lending sector, for the most part, and a lot of the absentee holders of mortgages are a major problem, but local banks are really part of the solution, not part of the problem, and that's why I've got Phil from County National Bank here with us. Phil?
Well, I know a part of, before you start talking, just to give you something to talk about what you're doing, when you talked about go to your mortgage company first to find out, I know that with a lot of mortgage companies, you'll go through your local mortgage company or local banks to get your mortgage for your home, but then they're sold on the secondary market. But does that mean that you don't really need to deal with the person that actually has your mortgage? You can still go to County National Bank and deal with them because they're still going to represent the people that came into them.
It's going to depend on whether that institution has retained the servicing themselves or if they've sold that mortgage servicing release.
So that's a good idea for somebody to ask when they go to get the mortgage, is their servicing going to remain here?
There are some local banks who sell the servicing to another company. County National retains the servicing. We actually collect 0.25% from Freddie Mac to service that on Freddie Mac's behalf. They've purchased that mortgage from us.
You're to be commended for that, but it's nice to know that the people in our community can keep coming to their local people.
Generally, the borrower never knows it's been sold if you have a loan with County National Bank, because we're taking your payment, we're doing the escrows in a lot of cases, we're doing the research, we have the documentation, we keep the files in a vault. You would never have to contact Freddie Mac. We would do everything for you, and honestly, you'd never know if we sold it or if we kept it in our own portfolio, because you're not going to notice any difference as a borrower. Now, it's not going to be true of every situation, and you bring up a very interesting point. We talked about this on Monday's radio show, that if your loan is sold, and it can be sold sometimes a dozen times to different people because they're packaged in large chunks, and they're sold and they're sold and they're sold, it can be very difficult to find out who actually holds the mortgage against your house. You may have to do a number of phone calls to finally find that person, and in some cases we found that a company that owned it at one point doesn't even exist anymore. They've since sold it, and you're kind of stuck in this loop. But it's not an advertisement for County National Bank, but we are doing our part to try to help. There's a couple things that I wanted to talk about. Julie brought up the Hamp Program. We, as County National Bank, and I think the other local banks, are actually using that same program for our in-house mortgages. So if you didn't qualify for a secondary mortgage loan, and there's typically a box that you have to fit into from a debt-to-income perspective, a loan-to-value perspective, and also a credit score, we can still do the mortgage for you. We just won't sell it to Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae. And then we also are trying to apply the exact same rules that Hamp would use to modify your loan to keep you in your house, which is decrease the rate, extend the term, we can forbear principal. And what that basically means is if your debt to income at 31%, let's say we drop you to 2% on your mortgage and we extend it to 40 years, but you can't quite afford that $90,000 mortgage, but you could afford 80, we could take 10,000 of that and put it on the end of the loan, and essentially you're paying on 80,000 for those 40 years, and then you would have 10,000 left at the end of the loan. It's not an ideal situation, because who wants to pay for 40 years and have 10,000 left over? But it will keep you in your home. And we've talked before, Nita brought up all of the kind of the unseen or unthought of negatives every time a home goes into foreclosure. So it's just a good thing to try to work with the local borrower. A couple of things I wanted to bring up. If you're not aware, the government did extend the first-time home buyer purchase program. So it also now, you can qualify if you own a home for a tax credit. The trick there is that you have to have lived in that home for 5 of the last 8 years. So you think back, you have to own the home for at least 5 years and live there for 5 years. So it could be the last 5 years. Or if you own the home 8 years ago and you sold it 3 years ago, you would still qualify because you've lived there 5 of the last 8 years. And then the maximum credit there is $6,500. So it's not the $8,000 that comes with the first-time home buyer credit. And again, it's a percentage of the home being purchased. It's 10% of the purchase price up to $6,500. Boy, that would be nice, wouldn't it? $6,500. And it's a refundable tax credit. So if your tax liability was only $5,000, you don't get just the $5,000 back. You actually get the whole $6,500. So you will get, you can get more than what you would have owed to the government through this program. So they've extended that through April of 2010, April 30th, 2010. It actually ends July 1st, meaning if you have signed a purchase agreement prior to that date and you close before July 30th, then you can still qualify. But you have to have signed the purchase agreement and begun the process by April of 2010. The good news, I guess, in that perspective is that hopefully we can get some of these foreclosures that are on the market off of the market and help bring home values back up, get people into homes. As unfortunate as the situation is for many homeowners, it does create opportunities for people, especially in this community, where we really are kind of a lower middle class community, to be able to have homes that are now more affordable because the prices have come down. Unfortunately, if you're a homeowner and you'd like to sell, good luck. It's a tough situation to be in, but it does provide some opportunity for people who maybe previously could not afford a home, who now can. The one piece of that, one caveat to that is that 100% financing tool that many of us enjoyed is for the most part gone. You can get 100% financing through MISHDA, which is the state of Michigan housing program, and through some rural development programs, which rural development is a federal program that works through the USDA. They do provide for 100% financing. That has gone by the wayside. I feel like that's a good thing. If you have no skin in the game, it costs you nothing to walk away from it. Really, people who were in homes at 100% financing were just glorified renters. They didn't actually have any real ownership in that home because they had no equity. They'd put nothing into it. And that's part of the reason that people have found it easy to walk away from homes, because it actually costs them nothing. Put nothing into it up front, made payments for a year, 6 months, and then they walk. If you look at the foreclosure notices in the paper, many of them are only 2 years old, a year old, sometimes 3 years old. It's rare that the majority are going to be younger mortgages, just a couple years old.
You find banks going after homeowners for deficiencies now because of the values going out, or they're not doing that?
Kind of across the board.
Do you want to explain what that means?
Sure. If your home goes into foreclosure and the bank takes it back and you owed $100,000, they take it back and they sell it for $50,000. There's a $50,000 deficiency, and somebody's going to have to pay for that. Either the bank's going to have to eat that expense, or they're going to come after the homeowner. Even in some deed in lieu situations, there can be deficiencies negotiated. But Freddie Mac right now and Fannie Mae are not going after homeowners in deficiencies. They're too busy. They do not have the resources or the time to pursue you because they're dealing with the next home they're taking back. If they did, in many cases, it would force bankruptcies to skyrocket, because that's now unsecured debt, and a bankruptcy filing will erase it. It will go away. So they know that. In most cases, it won't do them any good to try to get that deficiency back. It really won't, because of the bankruptcy piece. A lot of these people, most people, would stay in their home if they could afford it. We found at County National Bank that as we've reviewed our portfolio, and we didn't do one subprime mortgage, thank goodness, and we kind of stuck to what was supposed to be done and what was the tradition in lending, but we still have issues. We've made loans to people who have 30 years of job time, 700 plus credit scores, and 2 incomes, and they've lost jobs. Plants have closed. They've been laid off. There's been a divorce. There's been a sickness. There's been an accident. Life has happened to these people, and they would pay if they could. They simply cannot pay. So, we are trying to be proactive. Everybody who goes 30 days late gets a modification packet. That's just a rule that we have. Whether it's a Freddie Mac loan or an in-house loan, you get a chance to have us try to modify your loan. And we are doing them daily. We have 4 full-time people to do this. We've hired 2 in the last 18 months because of the volume, because of the need to help people stay in their homes. And truthfully, we only lose when we take it back. There's never a winner. Never. Yes, Ken?
If there was a deficit, I might have left a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. Do they have a certain amount of time if they did want to come? When is that? If there's a deficit with the homeowner, would they deficiency?
For the deficiency, might you help me with that? I don't know if there's a statute of limitation.
The statute of limitations in Michigan on a contract is 6 years.
Right.
If they got a judgment but didn't try to collect, they have up to 10 years and then they can renew it. So, it kind of the answer is...
It could still hang way out there, though.
It could hang out there for a certain period of time. I think they'd be bound by Michigan law on what the statute of limitations.
6 years they're bound by it, so they
either sue or let it go. 6 years.
Now, I'll bring this up too. This is a new concept that Fannie Mae has come out with. Freddie Mac has a similar product. If you're not familiar, Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae are the secondary market for loans. The 2 entities are government-sponsored entities, which technically means they're not under the branch of the government, but they're supported by the government. Okay, so they basically are. But what they've done, it was in the past when a bank did a loan, they kept it on their books. Well, banks only had so much capital, so when they lent all their money out to homeowners and were only collecting it back in monthly payments, they couldn't do any more mortgages. They simply didn't have any money. So the government recognized that there needed to be a secondary market for this, and they now buy these mortgages from the bank, freeing up those funds to be relent to new homeowners. It's a secondary market for loans. When a bank sells a mortgage to Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae, they are literally releasing the liability. It is now Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae's liability. That's why you have to fit in their box. Because there has to be a standard that they have set where they say, as long as they fit in this box, you're following the rules, we'll buy it from you. Now they can force you to buy it back, but if you're playing by the rules of the game, it typically doesn't happen. Now that said, County National Bank is a Freddie Mac shop. We only sell to Freddie Mac. So we abide by their guidelines. They're very similar, but there are some small differences. So just recently Fannie Mae came out with what's called Deed for Lease. This is not a trick. It's not a bait and switch. This is a legitimate, real program. Deed for Lease. And the idea here is you want to stay in your home. You haven't qualified for one of the modification programs that are available out there. And you would deed in lieu. Deed in lieu means deed in lieu of foreclosure. You do not go through the foreclosure process. You deed the property back to Freddie Mac, in this case, Fannie Mae, and they will enter into a lease agreement with you. And the amount of that lease will be 31% of your income, which is the magic number, or market rate. So if 31% of your income was way above market rate, they will bring it down to market rate. They will bring it down to market rate. If market rate was 700, but 31% of your income was only 500, then you would pay 500. They aren't going to force you over that 31% number. You have a 12-month lease, and then it's month by month thereafter. They're hoping that you have a chance then to correct whatever financial hardships you're having, and then go back and refinance the home. Buy it back from them, essentially. They do reserve the right to sell the home, which the assignment of leases would go with that, which means the new buyer would essentially be your tenant rather than...
Be your landlord.
Be your landlord. Thank you. Be your landlord rather than Fannie Mae. Freddie Mac has a similar program. Freddie Mac forces you through foreclosure, and then they invite you to lease it back. The fortunate thing with that is that the foreclosure process will so damage your credit that the idea of you going back a couple years later to get refinance just doesn't make any sense. So Fannie Mae is trying to keep people in their homes. Really, all of what everyone's trying to do here, between Gary and Julie and Anthony and everyone, is keep you in your home by whatever creative means we can. And let me tell you, we're getting very creative. We're getting very creative because, again, nobody wins. You lose your home, and I will guarantee you that whoever takes it back is not going to get to what it's worth out of it. Pennies on the dollar, 50 cents on the dollar. So we have no interest in being homeowners as bankers. We have no interest in being realtors or full-time collectors. So we are trying to help, and the government is trying to help. They're trying to do their part through the first-time homebuyer program, which encourages people to buy homes and absorb the overabundance that's on the market to raise property values, but also through these modification programs, through the refinance program that you talked about, which is actually a great... I'll tell you what, we have just been going gangbusters with that because Freddie Mac waived all their fees. The only fee you had was a 0.25% market condition fee, and the reason they were charging that was because they had taken so many losses, they were trying to recover some of their cash reserves. But there was no fees involved. We were out of time. I got a lot to say. Incidentally, if you know somebody who's taking advantage of the first-time home buyer, it's one form. This is the form you fill out with your taxes. It's 6 lines, so it's very easy. And you could do it on your own. If you fill out your own taxes, don't let it intimidate you. It's very simple.
I'm getting the hook, Phil. Well, I wanted to leave some time for some additional questions, or questions of anybody who's up here. Yes.
I guess the biggest question I have from what I've heard tonight as a local government representative, it sounds like the best thing I can do when being approached by my constituents is to refer them to the Community Action Agency. Is that correct?
The Community Action Agency and the Coalition's website. And the reason that I say both of those is that we have a limited number of certified free foreclosure counselors. And while on the one hand, we want to direct people to them if they need their help, they are there. We also know if everybody who needs them started coming and knocking on the door, there are a lot of those people who really could do this on their own if they had good information. So that's why my answer is check out the website, see if you can get up to speed yourself. If you're in any way uncomfortable, make sure you go to the foreclosure counselor, and that's calling Julie. And so it's 2 messages because there are a lot of, and Julie would say the same thing, there are a lot of people who if they just knew these, if they had good information in their hands, they could handle this on their own.
Right, because I think that's part of the reason you didn't have as good a turnout here tonight is because a lot of people, and I found this during my elections when I was running, a lot of people don't read the newspaper, and unless you happen to catch it on the radio at that certain time, they don't hear the radio. So if I can somehow bring that to people during discussion and we can get word of mouth out there, I want to be able to direct them in the right place where they need the help, because we do have a lot of people in our community.
Yeah, well, we need your help. We need to have help of everybody in this room because I'm always surprised at how little good information people have. There's a lot of embarrassment that goes with this, and I'll just say that right up front, because there are still a lot of people who think that this crisis is limited to people who are somehow not like them. The truth is this crisis is hitting everybody, and so you find people afraid to talk about it, and when you're afraid to talk about something, then you really kind of shut yourself off from the resources and the good information that's available. So every single person, has kind of a responsibility. Send people, get the word out. Send people to this website, send them to the Community Action Agency, distribute these brochures and these flyers, friends and neighbors, co-workers. I mean, it's everybody who's impacted. So we need you all to play the role that you're talking about. It's just a guess.
Well, the reason I'm here is because I have a house next to me that's in foreclosure. And I wonder...
Shake my hand.
What recourse you can do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been 2 years and nothing has been done. Mm-hmm. There's still all kinds of things in the house, on the porch, and it's just going down. And I'm at the age where I'd like to sell my house, but who's going to want to buy my house when this...
Right.
So what do you do?
Well, let me tell, I'm going to give you the short answer and the long answer. I'm not part of the long answer. It's almost 8 o'clock. The short answer is, first of all, on the website there's a whole section for neighbors that gives you really good step-by-step advice on what you need to do. I'll kind of give you shorthand of that.
I have a computer.
Okay, all right. Well, the short, and you can always call us too, and we can give you some of the answers. The shorthand is this. Do you know who is actually maintaining the property for the, do you know who the owner is?
I do not. The only thing I found out is that it's owned by a bank in California.
Okay, this is not unusual. So if you want to make sure that it's owned by that bank, you call your register of deeds. The register. Okay, great. The next step is this. If you have any luck getting in contact with that owner, then you ask them who the field servicer is, because banks that own these foreclosed properties are legally responsible for maintaining the property. That doesn't mean they always do it, but they're legally responsible. A good thing to check is if you check the house and see if there's a sticker on it anywhere, usually the field servicer will put a sticker on the house that says, and sometimes there's a real estate company that was hired by the owner-lender, sometimes it's the owner-lender institution. But if you can find out who's field servicing, is the lawn being mowed?
Yeah.
Okay, see, somebody is servicing that.
I asked them about, who hires them, and they won't tell you.
Okay.
They tell me. They just said they don't know. They get a check from someplace, and they don't know.
Are you, what municipality are you, in a city or a township?
City.
In the city. I would also suggest that you call the city community development department and get some good advice from them, because if you can't get any satisfaction by talking to the field servicers, if they're not answering. I had this happen to me, actually, too. I had the very same thing happen to me. They wouldn't return my calls. So anyway, get in touch with the city community development department and ask their advice. They, of course, are responsible when codes are not, if the house isn't kept up to code, if it's not secured, if the lawn's not mowed, if the sidewalk's not shoveled. It's your municipality that's responsible. But you want to partner with them. So I'd say you've done the right thing so far. You've found out who the owner is. You've talked to the field servicer and they won't let you know who they are. Okay, this happens all the time. I'd call the city community development department and let them know what's going on and see if you could get some satisfaction. Would you agree? You knew on city council. Gee whiz, I'm going to put you right in the spot.
The other thing one of the things is that we do have a code.
Gary.
Just a comment.
Yep.
I'd like to make.
One of the best things that happened to County Treasurer's Office this past year was that Phil does a weekly radio program called Phil on Finance on WCSR. Every Monday morning is at 9:30. Mm-hmm. Okay. And Phil invited me to be a part of his program early in the year, like late January, early February. Was I on like twice within about a month, I think, at that point in time, where we talked about the importance of people who are having a financial hardship, picking up the phone or coming into the office and making an appointment with us so that we could see if we could give them that 1-year extension. And I had a lot of calls and a lot of visits after that. And so we're going to do that again. And I think that Julie would be a good candidate for Phil to interview on that program and talk about some of the things that we've talked about here tonight. And Thomas, maybe you could, do some specials in the newspaper here in the next few months with those of us who've been on this panel, because we need all of the help we can get to get the message out.
Okay, well, we've run out of time. I want to thank everybody for coming. I guess takeaways from this, make sure you look at the printed materials that you got tonight. The website's on there, the phone number for Julie's on there, the phone number for Gary's on there, the phone number for legal services is on there. This coalition is only going to be successful if we have networks of partners who help us spread good information. So I think of all of you as part of that network of partners. If you want to get in touch with the coalition, which is, the coalition is basically a group of partners trying to push this stuff forward. If you want to get in touch with the coalition, there is a form on the website. All you need to do is fill out the form and email, and we get back to you literally right away. So if you want us to come speak anywhere, have any questions, you want to get involved in the committee work of the coalition, also sign up. Please sign in on the sign-in sheet out there and leave us either a phone number or an email address so that we can follow up with all of you and let you know the progress that we're making. So thank you to all of you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
And talking to us.
Hey, it's important stuff. We're glad to be here. Thank you.